I had Hieronymus fix the door, and then we did the bathroom test a few more times until I felt that Hieronymus had better control over himself. He still squirmed nervously when I was out of his sight, but, at the very least, he was able to accept that I was going to come back. I think it helped that I kissed him whenever he did well, although I was beginning to hate that little start he gave whenever I pulled away. He looked at me like he was afraid that I was going to be the last kiss I ever gave him, and I wasn't quite sure what I could say to assure him that I wasn't going to leave. I still wasn't sure Hieronymus was ready to tackle solid food yet, and so I let him sip some more soup on his own while I went to the desk, taking care of official correspondence and a letter from Beige. He had been the only person that I had been communicating with lately, mostly because we had stopped sending letters to each other. It was more like brief sentences that eventually stretched into a week-long conversation. It rained so much the stream overflowed. Feeling better today? Nope. Did you catch any fish? No fish really swim in the river. Any better today? Nope. I forgot to ask if you eat fish. You don't remember all the sushi I ate when we were in Hawaii? How about today? Hieronymus woke up today. This was the first letter that I got in response, and it was only 2 words. You okay? I can't help but snort as I smirk a little bit at the letter. I quickly write no in big letters and then send it, saying his name quietly to myself so as not to disturb Hieronymus. Still, as I hesitantly glance over one shoulder, I notice that he is watching me intently out of my peripheral vision. Who is that letter from? He asks. Virginia? No, Beige, I reply. I do this stupid little half-smile thing when I say it, and quickly try to purse my lips. Beige and I had never formally discussed the fact that his mother wanted us to get married, but Hieronymus was back now. That would never happen. Not that I wanted it to happen, but Beige was the only person that I had written to in these past few months, and it was starting to seem like he was my only friend. We sit in silence for a few moments. I don't know what to say to him, and Hieronymus doesn't seem to know what to say to me. I still hadn't told him what had happened that put him in that position. I still hadn't told him what happened to his father. I knew he wanted to know, but I also understood that Hieronymus didn't want to push me if I wasn't ready. He had finally told me about Violet, but I didn't think I was ready to be too honest with him just yet. Fortunately, there's a knock on the door, and I give Mariette permission to enter. Bon matin, she says, looking at me and not at Hieronymus. The Blazings are in the parlor for your weekly meeting. Merci, Mariette. Please make sure their needs are attended to, and I'll be there momentarily, I say. Mariette looks at Hieronymus nervously before she nods and then closes the door behind her. The Blazings? Hieronymus asks as he raises an eyebrow. Weekly meetings? What have you been up to in my absence? We can talk about that later, I say as I quickly change into a new dress. I can feel Hieronymus's eyes following me around the room as I change, but I try to ignore it for now. Just being in such a state of undress around him is making me think about the way his hands used to travel my body as he kissed me, and I can't think about that. Not right now. Probably not for a long time yet. Once I finish changing, I walk over to him, still seated on the bed. Part of me wants to straddle him, to kiss him, to feel him moan into my open mouth while he panted my name in my ear, but I quickly push the thought away. I won't be gone long, I tell him quietly. I'm going to use a sleep spell to knock you out for a bit. I think that'll make things easier for you. No, Hieronymus says with a shake of his head. No, this will be good practice for me. You want to make sure that I can be away from you for brief stretches of time. This will help me prove to you that I can be. I pause for a moment as I stare him down. And what if it becomes too much for you to handle? He picks up the stone in his fingers before he closes his fist around it. I'll focus on your heartbeat. I've always used it to make sure you were all right in the past. I can use it again now. I hesitate for a moment before I nod my head. I still wasn't entirely sure that I could trust him, but if he could just sit quietly on the bed for about an hour until I returned, it would go a long way to prove to me that he was getting some of his self-control back. I'm about to kiss him, then think better of it as I make a move towards the door. I stop myself, unsure why I had stopped myself from kissing him to begin with. I reach down and kiss him gently, and Hieronymous returns it with a hopeful smile before I just turn around and head out the door. I can't help but sigh and shake my head as I walk down the long corridor leading to the parlor where James and Oliver were waiting for me. I wasn't in the mood for my weekly lesson on tax law, but then again, I was never in the mood. However, they were kind enough to learn all about British tax law for me, which was apparently a lot different than American tax law, and so I made sure to listen up and pay attention. "Good morning, Tori," Oliver says pleasantly as I walk in. "It looks like you've barely slept. Have you been traveling again?" "Yeah, there's something I need to talk to you about," I say as I walk to the opposing couch and literally plop down. It's not very ladylike, but then again, I didn't have enough willpower to maintain pleasantries right now. Hieronymous woke up. "He's awake?" They both look shocked. He was able to wake up himself? I nod wordlessly. "And he's all right?" "It was hard for him to move and talk and stuff because he's been out of it for so long, but he's coming around," I tell them, making no mention of his abnormal fits of mood. "And he's all right?" Oliver asks hesitantly. He's, I bite my lip as my voice trails off. There's a lot he has to process. There's a lot that happened. I think he just needs time to, think through everything." "Well, that's understandable," he replies. "Just give him some time. I'm sure he'll be back to his old self before you know it." "Fingers crossed," I say, and I force a smile as I look back up at them. "Anyway, I remember last week you mentioned that there was information about capital investments that you wanted to share with me." We aren't talking for more than a few minutes when the door opens and Hieronymous steps through. He looks like he's had a shower and he's wearing his formal robes again. He still looks considerably pale, and it's clear that he's lost a fair amount of weight. Then again, I wasn't much better. Mariette had to refit all of my old dresses because they had suddenly become too baggy and loose around the middle. "Lord Grabiner," James says immediately as he stares up at him. How are you doing?" "I am recovering, thank you for asking," he says smoothly as he sits down on the couch beside me. His cape puffs out with a small flourish. "Now that I have returned, I will be resuming my duties as Viscount. However, this is something that Tori should learn at some point. I am just here to oversee what she has been learning under your exceptional tutelage." It sounded like that comment just might be sarcastic, and I try to resist the urge to smile. I always loved the way it wasn't immediately clear if he was insulting someone or praising them. But was this a sign that Hieronymous was really back for good? We've discussed a lot of things," Oliver says as he pushes his glasses up the bridge of his nose and shuffles around the papers on the table in front of us. "Tax law, investment strategies, compound interest, property code, and local enforcements." "It sounds like you've covered quite a lot," Hieronymous says softly. "However, I must inquire as to why my father has not been assisting in this matter. Surely his retirement is not so convivial that he would fail to assist in this matter?" The silence that descends upon the room is stifling, and Jacob's parents stare at me. I stare right back, none of us daring to look at Hieronymous. As always, thank you for your continued instruction, I tell them. But I think that's enough for one day. Yes, we've covered a lot, James agrees, although we haven't really covered anything at all. By the by, have you heard from Jacob at all? I have fallen behind on a lot of my personal correspondence, I tell them truthfully. Why? Is there something he needs? Oliver looks like he's about to speak up, but James puts out a hand to silence him. No, that's all right. We'll take our leave now. I felt like there was something that they weren't telling me, but that was a problem for later. Right now, I just sit there, staring at the low table in front of me, until they're out of the room. I'm sorry, Hieronymous says quietly. I did not mean to interrupt your lesson. I was just curious as to what you were learning, and... You could have used scrying, as you so often did, I said quietly, still not looking at him. I'm going back to the room. I don't even hesitate as I immediately teleport back to the room. Hieronymous follows a second after me, his arms crossed over his chest. I'm surprised he had enough strength to teleport, but then again, we were in the other world, and his magical abilities probably recovered quicker than I thought. Where is my father, Tori? He demands. Why don't you want to tell me? I know you two don't get along. Did you insist on taking over my Viscount responsibilities independently of him? I don't know what to say, so I just shrug. Tori, I know you two don't get along, but as you informed me, this work is easier with his assistance, Hieronymous continues. I will write to him. I will get him to return. I just nod. Hieronymus's relationship with his father was complicated, and sure, they didn't get along, but even I didn't get along with my father, and I was still upset when he died. Hieronymus's emotions were volatile right now, and I couldn't risk saying something that would upset him. He still needed more time to heal, and it was starting to seem like that would have to be done independently of me. I need to take care of a few things in Shetlock, I say after a moment. I'll leave tonight. I'll be back in a few days. I think it might be best for you to recover privately. Hieronymus narrows his eyes at me. No, Tori, if you're leaving, I'm going with you. I just shake my head. I'm sorry, Hieronymus, but no. I think we both need space to think about what happened more clearly, and I think I'm just getting in the way. Tori, you are not leaving this room. Hieronymus stands in front of the door, crossing his arms over his chest. You are staying. I will make you stay. That might have worked when I was still a student, but I had been through so much in the past few months, it barely even fazed me. I was an adult now, and I wasn't going to accept him talking down to me like this any longer. Pajorjan, I summon you, I call suddenly. Hieronymus looks confused until the Manus appears, hovering directly behind me. You require my assistance, Lady Grabiner? He asks, and Hieronymus looks absolutely stunned. Lord Grabiner needs to rest, I say, staring Hieronymus down. See to it that he does not leave this room. Consider it done, the Manus replies, and without waiting, I teleport away.